Welcome to the iHeartRadio broadcast. Today we want to look at how a diet that is low in calories and high in carbohydrates can actually help your brain health. New research published in the journal Cell Reports suggests that a low-protein, high-carbohydrate diet may be easier alternative to calorie restriction for people looking to preserve brain health and prevent cognitive decline. As the world's population gets older and the body fat of the population gets higher, protecting against cognitive declines is becoming increasingly important. One way to achieve this is by restricting the number of calories that you eat each day. An established body of research that's been held to be the benefits of severe calorie restriction, we find that reducing calories has these following benefits: that it lengthens the lifespan, maintains mental agility, and prevents neurodegenerative conditions so that you don't have the same problems as other people as you get older. It does so in mice, and it does so in humans. The benefits of fasting and doing restricted calorie diets have been known for years, but translating those benefits of this reduction and restriction to humans can be challenging because it requires a great deal of willpower to cut calories. It's awfully difficult to achieve. So there are helps that you can do, and one of the ways that you can do that is to help yourself by knowing what the benefits of a healthy diet looks like, especially one that's low in protein, one that's high in good carbohydrates and low in calories. To establish that, researchers at the Charles Perkins Center at the University of Sydney in Australia turned to that type of diet to answer those questions. In a study, a professor of geriatric medicine at the University of Sydney, who was the senior author, suggested that we have close to 100 years of quality research that basically extols the benefits of calorie restriction as the most powerful diet to improve brain health. And yet, it also delays the onset of neurodegenerative diseases in rodents. So he postulated that, well, wouldn't that help humans also? Especially since the majority of people have a hard time restricting calories, and it seems that neurodegenerative diseases are on the rise, just as the amount of obesity is on the rise throughout Western societies, especially where food is so freely available. It was found in previous studies that a low-protein, high-carbohydrate diet improved longevity, just like calorie restriction. However, until now, the medical community has been really unaware of whether this diet also benefits the brain. As you understand, the research wants to know, with the onset of increasing neurodegenerative diseases coming out, like dementia and Parkinson's for people as they get older, they want to know what's the difference between this type of diet and the traditional diet. So they looked at what happens in the traditional diet, like Okinawa, where around 9% protein is taken in on a daily basis. And that's usually in lean fish, soy, and plants, with very little beef. In the current study, the colleagues searched and found that starch-derived complex carbohydrates and casein protein, that's the type of protein that's usually found in dairy, and it's a longer-lasting protein instead of whey protein, does very well in the human body. And it helps restrict the calories because the body doesn't have as much hunger. It has a satiety effect. So when he looked at what mice were doing, when they were put on this restricted access to that high carbohydrate, high complex carbohydrate diet, which means it also was high in fiber, it found that the researchers showed that there was an intake in the group of mice by 20%. However, they did not increase in weight. The team compared the effects of these diets on the biology of the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain that's involved in memory formation, and they were surprised. They discovered that the memories and the cognitive abilities using maze and tests involving recognizing new objects that the mice were put in, they could do it much faster and recognize it much quicker on this type of diet. So the researchers postulated that this diet must have something to do with the way that the patterns of RNA are expressed in the brain cells. So they looked at it. And what they found is that the low-protein, high-carbohydrate diet appeared to promote the hypothalamus health and biology in the mice, and so that the measures were even greater degree on those who also did it with a low-calorie diet. So the overall research said that the maze and the new subjects, when they of the new objects and recognition tests, they modestly improved in both groups, but there was more improvement in the calorie-restricted diet. And they also commented that there's currently no effective treatments for dementia. So if we can slow down these diseases, not necessarily stop them, then that would be exciting to start a way to identify diets that can impact your brain health as you age. So it shows a lot of promise in looking at this study that if you take in a low-protein, high-carbohydrate complex diet, that there's a good, strong possibility that may have a epigenetic effect on the way that the genes replicate in the part of the brain responsible for memory. And that you may also see that when you add severely restricted calories on an intermediate fasting or fasting basis from time to time, that the results are even more impressive. So these results build on previous findings by the same researchers in the center, where they suggested in 2015 that a low-calorie, high-carbohydrate complex diet and low protein is just as good for longevity as a calorie-restricted diet, because they promote heart and digestive health. So we'll keep you posted as we find out more about these. But the question comes in, what type of carbs should you avoid? Many people avoid eating carbohydrates altogether to help them lose weight. But is that really what you should do? Listen, the body needs carbohydrates, and it's long been debated by researchers on what particular type of carbohydrate that you need to be healthy. You've got to remember, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins make up 3 macronutrient groups that are essential components of everybody's diet. However, different types of carbohydrates are different in the way they respond in the system, both in blood glucose and in insulin. So when you look at the differences between them, in order to understand which ones to eat and which ones to best avoid, you have to understand the simple things, like the difference between simple and a complex carbohydrate, like we just spoke about. When we look at carbohydrates, they're the body's main energy source of energy and represent an essential part of almost every healthy diet. The different types of carbohydrates, though, vary in impact that they have on a person's health. For example, fiber, starch, and sugar are all carbohydrates. These 3 broad groups of carbohydrates can be broken down further into monosaccharides, which is basic form of carbohydrates, like what you find in glucose and fructose, disaccharides, which are 2 monosaccharide molecules that are bonded together, like in lactose and sucrose, and then polysaccharides, which refers to a chain of more than 2 monosaccharide molecules bonded together. Examples, that would be fiber and starches. And in the polysaccharides, we find that they take longer to digest and take up more calories to digest. So the monosaccharides and disaccharides make up the different types of sugars that are known as simple carbohydrates. They provide a rapid source of energy. Fiber and starch are made from polysaccharides and are known as complex carbohydrates. They contain longer chains of molecules that take longer for the body to break down and digest. So foods that contain complex carbohydrates are generally more nutritious than most of the simple carbohydrates. For example, complex carbohydrates include whole grain foods and vegetables. Example simple carbohydrates is corn syrup, soda, and cookies. So when you eat healthy carbohydrates, like the polysaccharides, where you're eating the fibers and the starches, you'll find that if you go on a low carbohydrate diet, or you cut carbohydrates out entirely, it's not a good idea, because the body needs those essential micronutrients as a valuable energy source. And so it'll make you even more hungry for other carbohydrates. A healthy diet should always include nutritious complex carbohydrates more than any simple carbohydrates, because simple carbohydrates contain little or no nutritional value. It's easy to replace these types of carbohydrates with more healthy alternatives. And we just want to give you a couple of them right now. You can replace any type of soda drink or fruit juices with water or natural fruit juices. You can choose whole fruits with the peel instead of foods that are high in added sugar, such as cakes and cookies. You can eat whole grain pizza or whole wheat products or quinoa rather than white pasta. And you need to swap the white bread out for whole grain bread or wraps and add a little butter to it to change the glycemic response. And then snack on nuts instead of potato chips. Many people claim to have low-calorie foods. However, you have to look on it, because what happens in low-calorie foods, that means that they either increase the fat content to make it taste good, or if it's low-carbohydrate version, they've increased fats to make it taste better, so that they add artificial sweeteners and emulsifiers and unhealthy additives. So give up the cookies and the cake, turn on to complex carbohydrates, and just fill yourself full with vegetables and nuts and beans and whole grains and legumes, and you'll find that you have a healthier diet. It's just as simple as replacing many of your carbohydrates with fiber, which is an essential nutrient in maintaining a healthy digestive system and reducing the risk of developing cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes in some people. So replace those high sugary content carbohydrates with things that are much better for you, like fiber. And despite containing those things that are bad for you, also avoid juices because they can hurt you. The takeaway is very simple. Carbohydrates are highly nutritious and a valuable source of energy. However, it's essential that you know the difference between complex carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates. Limit simple carbohydrates as they don't satisfy hunger, and actually within 30 or 45 minutes you'll get hungry again. Whereas if you replace them with complex carbohydrates, it'll mediate your hunger levels. And it also has a better food content. So increase the number of complex carbohydrates, and they'll make you feel fuller and longer, and they're typically more nutritious, and you'll see that your weight gain slows down to even stops and reverses just by changing out the carbohydrates and eating a lower calorie diet, and you'll see the results that you're hoping for. And this is our special nutrition podcast from the iHeartRadio